Do you find yourself being more anxious than ever, especially when it comes to thinking about retail? Well, I'm glad you're joining me for how to be resilient and hopeful in a time of change. Now, that's not to say it's going to be easy, because the media is coming out with daily stories of something horrible, and I just saw this one about a month ago. Survey: COVID-19 will permanently shift online spending habits. And the whole idea is that everybody will only be shopping online for the foreseeable future, and there's nothing we can do about it. And it kind of reminded me of about 100 years ago in the United States. We were dealing with the Spanish flu. And at that time, we lost an awful lot of people, I think 600,000. And they said that permanent changes had been done to shopping and to work and to how we lived our lives. And yet, a year later, we were in crowded speakeasies finding a way to get back to normalcy. And I think that, yes, we have to be careful, and I'm not looking to minimize the effects of COVID. But the more that we go through and believe all of the doomsaying, I think the more it deflates us and keeps us from being resilient. So the opportunity that I see around is that the holiday survey that was just done by Coresight Research just the other week said that about 70% of holiday shoppers expect to switch from spending money for services to spending for products. And that's going to be a huge boon to retail around the world. And that's a big change, because all we kept hearing for the last several years was people want experiences and paying for services, not products. Also, almost 52% plan to trade up to better products. That means price and promotion are probably not going to be nearly as important as convenience, as exclusivity, and as really having something different than what they can get from an online or a direct-to-consumer business. And finally, about 50% expect to spend more money because they've either saved it or they spent less in the last few months. That's pretty good, huh? And the top three gifting categories are 44% clothing, footwear, and accessories. And why is that important? Because what happened in March when COVID really started going? All the apparel stores were going off. People were saying how we don't need new clothes because of we're doing Zoom, et cetera, et cetera. And yet that is the top category for people to look at. So take heart, apparel retailers. Looks like the holidays is going to bring shoppers back, whether that's online or curbside or whatever, but their interest in footwear, clothing, accessories is coming back. Also, gift cards and vouchers, we knew that because that's been on a tear for the last several decades. And finally, electronics, no big news there because people are at home and they're looking for digital entertainment. Also, I saw this Alliance Credit Union about this same time last year had done a survey, and they said the average household planned to spend about $1,000 last year, whereas Microsoft's report recently from last month said that the average household will spend about $1,500 this holiday season. That's good news. Now, that's going to not just be gifts, but that's going to be decorations and everything around it. And the reason why I share that is because 3 out of 4 customers are going to change something meaningful about the way that they shop to brands they were previously loyal to. And that came from McKinsey. Why is that important? Because I think so many of us think, well, I've got my loyal customers. And what we really have had is a sea change in people buying and shopping in different ways. Their products are finding them on social media. They are seeking them out. Direct-to-consumer companies are finding new ways to reach them through Instagram and stories and all kinds of things. But the loyalty that your shopper had to you is up for grabs. The good news is it's also up for the other guys. So if you do a better job, you might just capture that interest and be able to make them a loyal shopper as well. I think too often we have looked at retail as a game of pretty much harvesting the fruit that's on the ground. What do I mean by that? Pretty much employees would say, "Hi, can I help you find something?" And somebody says, "Yeah, I'm looking for this widget. Do you have it?" And they say, "Oh, it's right over here." The problem is that's exactly what the online behemoths are doing, because that's really just a little more than fulfilling an order. And we have to get earlier than that. We've got to find a way to go through and get up there earlier. And that means we got to get up in the trees, and we're going to have to shake it a bit, and we're going to have to harvest it, and we're going to have to be thrilled that we are finding it, and we're going to have to be really on point that things are different now. But I get it. You know, curbside delivery was forced on an awful lot of retailers, and people said, "Oh, this is the wave of the future." Well, I get it why it's the wave of the future, because consumers love to know that they can always get it faster if they just go to the store. But also, a really surprising fact came out of the New York Times recently that said the pull to drive to a store can be even stronger than the convenience of home delivery. What does that mean? That idea of driving to the mall may not necessarily be there, but driving to a business, driving to pick it up, still has that feeling of something special. I don't know if you remember that old movie, The Music Man, and there was little Ronnie Howard singing the Wells Fargo wagon, because the idea of that expectation of what am I going to get still is deep in all of us to shop. And why do retailers like curbside? It's really simple. Why would I pay all the extra money I have to get that last mile if the shoppers are going to pay for it instead, and I don't have to give that to UPS or FedEx or somebody else? So there's an awful lot of good, but there's also a downside too. You know, this last week, Walmart reported that on a $100 curbside order, the labor costs of picking it reduced their profit by $1.50 while still leaving them $3 in profit. Now, their scale allows them to have those margins, but realize that the more we touch the item, the more you're probably going to give up margin. And again, we're still talking about hope and resilience here, but just make sure that you're not kidding yourself that some of the tools we've had to use are going to be the best tools to be able to bring about change and extra sales for you this holiday season and in 2021 as well. And so my second point to you is to train. And the reason that is I just did a survey on LinkedIn, and I just said, since COVID-19, do you place more emphasis on your frontline associates or technology? And it's interesting because it started off about 75% were on the technology side, right? We're giving people tablets, we're doing all these new innovations with technology, but the winners still come back to the front line. Why? Because it's the only thing you can control. Look, I can't control your competitors. I can't control your malls that are competing against you, the department stores that are going out of business, the other smaller retailers. I can't do any of that. But if you're watching this and you're a retailer or you're a mall, all you can control is your four walls. And your four walls are all about people. I don't care what digital tech tool comes up. I don't care what product comes up. Until you touch somebody's heart with it, you develop a relationship, and until you sell it, it doesn't really matter. And selling is only a transference of feeling. And so how do we train? Well, for one thing, let's get rid of the no time to train excuse. I've heard that for the past 30 years as the retail doctor. Oh, we're just too busy. It's the holidays. It's the downturn. Oh, it's COVID. You name it, there's always been a reason. It's kind of like saying, oh, well, there's a reason why I can't stop smoking because, you know, I'm stressed right now. You're always stressed. There's always an excuse. And the challenge, I think, for retail going forward is, when are we going to get back to creating an exceptional experience? Because until we do that, until we understand that takes training, I think we're going to have a tough time, because there's always somebody cheaper online. There's always somebody cheaper. You can't compete on price in this day and age. But for your employees, if you're going to pay them, why aren't they learning something? And that's going to mean you're going to have to role play with them. You're going to have to go through and cross-train. But you have to do more than just give them another task to go pick this order that came in so that we can get it out in the next few hours or minutes or whatever it's going to be. And if you're sales reps watching this, get on Zoom calls with your retailers and talk about the products, but talk about who this is perfect for. Why is this better than another? Compare and contrast. Help them to be trained. Because the problem with most of us is we look at training as something we did. I checked the box. And it's this thing that we have to get over. And I'm here to tell you that you can't practice till they get it right once. You practice till they can't get it wrong out on the sales floor. Now, I know some people will say, you know, that's old school. Well, you look at the companies that are killing it, and you look at the Lululemons, and you look at the Levi's, and some of the other brands who are talking about opening stores, and they're positive. What do they all have in common? A culture that says we train, not we trained. Because too many of our retailers are settling for employees who aren't doing the job. Now, let me tell you a quick story. So I'm finished a speech in Denver. I'm walking down the street. I see this big A-frame sign in front of this hair salon. And it says 4 out of 5 guys notice they have thicker, fuller hair with this product. So I'm like, great. So I walk in the front door. There's a young woman there. And I just point to her. I go, I want to get that. And she goes, well, you know it's expensive. And I said, do I look homeless or something? And she goes, well, I just want you to know it's really, really expensive. And I'm just standing there baffled, looking around. And the manager comes up. She goes, is there a problem here? So I told her what happened. And she goes, well, you should know it's really, really expensive. And I said, does it look like I care how expensive it is? And she said, well, we really don't sell a lot of it because it's so expensive. And this is the problem in most retail. Because you have employees, younger people who can't afford the products you're selling, the best merchandise sits until it goes on sale, and then it's easy because you didn't train anybody. It's easy for them to go, oh, when you get 2 for 1 or it's 50% off, and then they kick in because they feel like, oh, that's the real price of the item. But those of you who are watching know that selling is a game of how high is up. It is not how low can we go. And so training helps you do that in such a different way. In fact, I have my online retail sales training program. Marilyn was telling me the other day that we used to just help shoppers find what they asked for, even if it wasn't the best tool for their needs. And that's the key for all of us. We've got to find a way. Because here's the thing. If you aren't motivated to change, if you aren't seeing that there's an opportunity out there for all of us to be resilient, to be more optimistic, then my guess is you really haven't dug deep enough. And I have a little exercise for you. So I want you to think of this big castle, like that. And it's a big castle, and it's ringed with a big moat with snapping crocodiles, and it's on fire. There's a fire-breathing dragon out there who's flying around. But for you, if you get it all the way through the castle, you get all the way to that top, to that very top spire, up there in the bedroom, in the corner, just for you is a $20 bill. Tell me, are you going to storm the castle? Of course you're not. You'd be crazy to. There's not enough reward for that risk, right? But what if it was a person that you loved? What if it was a small child? What if it was a favorite pet? Now, would you change your mind? Well, of course you would. You'd say, well, of course, I'd do anything for them. And that's the problem with most of us. I think we check into our retail stores and we're like, well, it's hopeless. We're watching the news, all these other things. And we don't take it to heart that we've got to change the way we come to work. We've got to show up in a different way. And so I ask you to think of, what's your ultimate why? Why do you show up? What is it? Oh, well, I'm trying to grow sales. That's not enough. Well, go further than that. Why do you want to grow sales? Well, I want to have a job. Okay, why do you want to have a job? I want to have a job because I want to make enough money. Great. And why is that? Because I don't want my kids to start college with a mountain of debt when they get older. Okay, that's an ultimate why. That can help you. Because when you connect the dots, you also understand that it has to be about more than just going through and selling more widgets. That's not going to get you excited every morning to go to work and to battle. And when you connect those dots, you make it your story. You can be the hero of this. You can be the one that leads the charge. That's what's so exciting. And when we do that, then you understand that when I actually commit, when I understand my ultimate why, then the hows are going to show up. And I want to introduce you to Stages West. They're in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. They're one of my clients. And when they got locked down in March and April, they instantly went into Sales RX. They started learning. They started doing sales role plays through Zoom. But everything we heard was no one's going to be in tourist destinations. No one's going to be buying apparel. All of it is doom and gloom. No one's going to buy anything ever again. And yet, when they reopened, they're up 20% over last year in a tourist destination only selling apparel. What does that tell you? Either I think I can or I think I can't. It's really up to you. But it starts with that ultimate why, doesn't it? So how can retailers recover from these COVID conditions? It brings me to my last point, which is hope. We have to give people a feeling they matter. And that goes for your crew and your team that you work with, as well as your customers, because people who feel they matter buy more. It's that simple. Retailers are saying, oh, well, no one's going to the mall, no one's going to boutiques, no one. Yeah, well, let me ask you a question. Would you stand in line on a sidewalk to have the experience that people have in your mall, in your store? Well, that's different. Is it different? Is it different? Because my guess is that you know that you don't really feel anything different when you come in contact with a lot of your employees. And until we change that, I think we're going to be settling for crumbs when we can have the whole feast. Because fear is the path to the dark side. In fact, they're now calling it doom scrolling. You know what that is? You're looking on social media, you see something, you do a frowny face, then you go down the rabbit hole of something worse and something worse, and then you end up feeling totally disempowered and you go to work. And that's terrible. But why is hope important? Because hope pulls you forward and gives you the energy you need for these really hard decisions, to find the hows of how do I go through and motivate a crew? How do I go through and become a re-energized leader? How do I go through and reinvent a retail concept that frankly might have been coasting along really well until COVID happened? And so my final story for you today is that back in 2008, when the market crashed, I had put my house for sale in California and had bought another house in New York. And somehow I was caught with those two mortgage payments. The house wasn't selling out there, I already had this. And the crash comes, and overnight I lost 4 or 5 of my biggest clients. And we're talking, you would know these Fortune 100 companies. And so I called one of them up. And I said, so, Donna, when am I going to see you again? And she goes, well, Bob, let me explain something. All of our product engineers are actually painting striping on the warehouse floors right now. And the reason they're doing that is because, one, our CEO had said we're not going to get rid of anybody during this downturn. But number 2 is there's not a single product in our warehouse. You're not going to see us for 5 years, if then. And I got really depressed, and I thought, oh my God, what's going to happen? And I'm a motivational speaker, right? So I'm hearing all the buzzwords that no one's hiring and all of these things, and I got really depressed, and I ended up going through and I listened to a great recording. You can listen to it. It's called The Strangest Secret, and you can see it on YouTube. It's the #1 motivational recording ever, and you can listen to it now for free, but you had to buy it then. And I must listen to that 20 times a week over and over to get my head in the game. And one thing I came up with is before I go to bed, I came up with the 5-5-5 system. I'm going to share that with you because we're talking about resilience and optimism, and I'm telling you it starts with you. Until you're grateful, you're not going to be hopeful. So here's what happens. When you go to bed tonight and you turn out the lights, first off, make sure you don't have your phone because that's just going to give you a notification of something bad and somebody did something, and it's going to be designed to make you fearful so that you'll click and ultimately they'll be able to sell somebody an ad. So don't do that. Get that out of your bedroom. That's number 1. But then when you go to bed, you turn out the lights, you pick up your feet and you put your head down, pull out your fist, and I want you to come up with 5 things you were grateful for today. Doesn't matter what they were. I saw a friend. I went for a walk with my dog. I had the best cheeseburger. I don't know. You come up with 5. Doesn't matter. Whoever you were with, it's your call. Whatever those 5 are. Can you go to bed yet? Sleep yet? No. What you have to do is you have to come up with 5 for you're looking forward to tomorrow. So what 5 things are you looking for the next day? I'm going to go through and I'm going to go and take out my camera and watch birds for an hour. I'm going to go through and break out the barbecue. Whatever it is, I'm going to call a friend. Whatever it is, you decide. Doesn't matter. Can you go to sleep? Yes, you can go to sleep. When you wake up, can you get up? Not yet. I want you to pull out your fist. I want you to come up with 5 things you're looking forward to that day. Now, yeah, it could be the same ones you did last night, but it's probably going to be something different, and that's okay. It doesn't matter. Now, why are you doing this? Because you are rewiring your brain to say, find gratitude, and from being grateful, because being grateful is really just taking stock of the things that are the experiences of your life. It's your real life. And then from that, you can become hopeful. So I've shared this with many people around the world, and I shared it with my aunt, who was at my house a while ago, and she was just a really negative person, always telling me, like when I picked her up to come to my house, oh, over there's where that young woman had an accident and it crushed her leg. She couldn't walk again. And then there was a town that had a big flood, and there was, they still haven't been able to recover from it. All of these bad stories. And finally, I told her about the 5-5-5 method, and she said, I think that's really going to work. Well, time passed. A few years later, she calls me up. She goes, hey, Bob, I just want to let you know that 5-5-5 method really works. And I said, yeah, I know. And she goes, but I want to tell you a story. This morning, I went downstairs, and John, her husband, was sitting by the sliding glass door. It's raining outside. The light wasn't on, and he's crying. And I went over to him, and I was concerned. I said, John, what's wrong? What's wrong? And he said, this morning, I couldn't even find one. And Bob, what you don't know is last night at 4 o'clock at his doctor's appointment, he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And I took his hand and I said, well, together we'll find 5. And you know what we did? I just want to thank you for that. And the reason I share that with you today is because when we're talking about being resilient and hopeful, that's what you do for your crew. That's what you do for your customers. We have to remind ourselves that we've been through a seismic shift of a lack of trust and anxiety, and we are the foundation that rebuilds communities on hope. And from that, I just appreciate you joining me here today. If you like what I have to say, I'd love you to take my moniker of In Hope, I Am Fearless, and let's go forward and do something great, because we can change the world with the people working and shopping in retail if we just remind ourselves that in hope, I am fearless.